And I'm an sorry. Good evening. My name is Alex Chavez, and I'm an ABC certified prosthetist orthotist from Orthotics and Prosthetics Clinics of America. And thank you all for having me this evening to give my presentation on prosthetics and self-image. Before we get started, I figured I should tell you just a little bit about myself and why I am presenting on this subject. I am a biomedical engineer that has worked in nearly every aspect of the field of prosthetics and orthotics for over 15 years now. In addition to my current role as clinical director for OPCA, I've been a technician. I've worked in research and development, clinical education. I've worked fabrication facility management, and as the chairperson for physical inclusivity at a international sports organization.
Great.
With these roles, I've always leaned into and accepted higher responsibility for improving the experience of the people I'm servicing. Through many patient engagement events that I've been lucky to attend and on occasion host, I've realized how adamantly many of my fellow clinicians tend to focus on how a new device feels physically, and so rarely address how our patients feel emotionally. With my own anecdotal experience of addressing the aesthetics of devices as a foundation for my interest on this topic, I stumbled into a lot of research regarding this that I'm hoping will help patients improve their emotional experience with prosthetic devices. And I hope our psychologist here could forgive any generalizations and dilutions surrounding a lot of these psychology-based concepts. I tried to make it nice and digestible for the masses. I'm going to commit to being open with this group because many of the conversations that I've had on this topic have resulted in emotional reactions. And if it ends up not being for you, Yuri, I'm sorry, but it's a relatively short presentation, so hopefully you can bear with me through it. Many prosthetists like myself are more empathetic than we might seem to be. There's this massive deficit in clinicians, and it's only getting broader because our field is relatively unknown outside of the community that needs our services. Also, it's far less lucrative than your insurance billing would lead you to believe. Like many industries, we've been impacted by investor firm purchases and unregulated monopolization for decades. But that doesn't stop many of us from volunteering outside of our business hours. I used to be a part of AMP Surf here on the left, and I coach adaptive climbing and quite a few other sports, and I volunteer at the Keystone Adaptive Center. And there's so many clinicians that are just doing this on their free time. We don't usually have an incentive to go to these things. And every time you see a clinician there, it's usually on a weekend or something like that. And that's our own free time that we're putting out for this stuff. So I do firmly believe that most clinicians are in the field because they care. And they do truly care about you, while simultaneously recognizing that sometimes the bureaucracy of the US insurance policy and corporate contracting often gums up the whole experience for patients. With that being said, let's talk a little psychology and why I felt this topic was important enough for me to speak about this fine Wednesday evening. There are a lot of very wordy scientific publications that agree amputation is oftentimes as much or even more psychologically traumatic than physically. We as a society, however, don't have the science to build prosthetic emotions, so our role as clinicians is to focus on what we can do, which is return function. That's not to say that we don't have the capacity to help with the psychological impact of it all. First, I do want to validate those feelings that many individuals have that they might feel they don't have the capacity to speak about in the moment with their clinician about self-image. Then we can go into options that you can discuss with your prosthetist on how to help improve those aspects, if you will. So what even is self-image? Self-image is a pretty self-explanatory concept, but I wanted to digest the word itself before getting started on its elevated importance to this community in particular. Cambridge defines self-image as your opinion on yourself, especially how you appear to other people. While this definition is relatively short and direct, I think it has two very important words in it: opinion and appear. Opinions. Most people change their opinions frequently about a variety of things. For instance, maybe you have dinner plans with a friend, but you ended up eating pasta for lunch, and now Olive Garden just doesn't sound as good as it did yesterday. Occasionally, we have opinions that are changed because of circumstance. You're getting a routine oil change and your mechanic noted how bald your tires were and you disagreed. You didn't need new tires. The next day it snows and you almost hit a parked car when you were exiting your driveway because of the slippage. You'd be pretty quick to change your opinion on needing those new tires, right? Every once in a while, though, we have opinions that change because of a deeper self reflection. These opinions take time to process, and they can't begin if we don't process, but they can't begin that process if we don't try to begin processing it. We don't initiate that processing. Choosing to change our opinions takes time, patience, and effort, and oftentimes there may be some emotional discomfort. It's important to take a look at your goals and the bigger picture and see how little variances in your opinions can help you achieve those goals. So, appearance and perception. When most people think of appearance, they think strictly of the physicality of how somebody looks. Oftentimes, what we forget is that looks in combination with actions form how we are perceived. And how you perceive yourself is the basis for how others will perceive you. Style is personal to the individual. It doesn't matter if you feel like looking like a mom or a dad or a punk or a business professional, as long as you're being you. Some people wear their emotions on their face and others don't. Emotion is deeply tied to nonverbal communication, which is something that we are subconsciously in tune with. Being able to recognize your nonverbal communication will help you to portray the emotion you want. For a lot of my upper limb amputees, this commonly presents as hiding their residuum with long sleeves or tucked into their pockets. For lower extremity amputees, this may look like opting for pants more often than or taller boots when the weather may suggest otherwise. Ways to hide your prosthesis or your difference, if you will. And then, in addition to that, there's non-emotion, which includes other feelings that are not innately emotional, like confidence and pride. But with all those research articles I threw at you earlier, there's one major underlying piece here, and that is that amputees are at a disadvantage for a naturally positive self-image. And that is simply and unfortunately because of how our brains are wired. There's a graph here in the study of human psyche with the axes of affinity and human likeness, the affinity on the side there, human likeness on the bottom, with a theory about this major dip down at the bottom there, this dip here, titled the Uncanny Valley. That dip itself is called the Uncanny Valley. Now, this is not a concept that is specific to prosthetics or to amputees, but even articles that have nothing to do with amputees or prosthetics end up including the prosthetic user population as a subject for the Uncanny Valley. So even though people don't have to be researching prosthetics when they're talking about Uncanny Valley, it still comes up because of how ingrained it is to the psyche behind amputation and limb loss. Essentially, we have a natural affinity towards humans and things that look and act like humans. We're not inherently distrusting of industrial robots, but are generally curious about its human-like motions. Toy robots are fun and generally not threatening, and most kids have and love their Barbies, right? Now, most people that have seen Japanese Bunraku puppets find them a little bit creepy, bringing their affinity down versus Barbies, even though they move more like humans, right? So that's kind of on the way up on that slant that is the Uncanny Valley. Extrapolating on this idea, we have the foundation for the horror genre, with things like zombies at the bottom of the valley because people are disgusted by them, both because they look and act almost human, but are just far enough away that they give us that little pit in our stomach, which kind of represents the Uncanny Valley. The adrenaline that pit causes is the primary reason people who love horror really love it. The adrenaline rush, if you will, is provoked by their fight or flight response. Due to the human function of prosthetics, they fall in this range here, with prosthetic feet and microprocessor hands falling just above affinity, because they're pretty close, but they're still hard to get used to. And below the affinity line are going to be really the 1990s and early 2000s prosthetic gloves. We've made some major progress in the way the silicone gloves look, but If you've ever seen a upper extremity silicone glove from the 1990s or 2000s, they don't look good. They are scary. They're scary looking. They don't look quite human enough. This graph demonstrates how difficult it is to accept a prosthetic, at least initially, which is why I'd like to show you some ways for individuals to truly own their prosthesis, really make it a part of them, and boost that confidence and pride that I mentioned earlier. Starting with the thing that most of us are at least a little bit familiar with, it's graphics. These two methods here are the most common and easiest way to customize your prosthetic limb to be a little more personal. The three set cuts on the left are just fabrics that the patient picked out at a fabric store like Joann's or Hobby Lobby. And on the right is a regular Broncos shirt from the NFL online store that I laminated into a socket. Pretty straightforward presentation. These are great and easy way to improve acceptance of a prosthesis. While this is the most common form of an aesthetic change when it comes to overcoming individual opinions on self-image, a patient needs to already have become comfortable with the pylons and componentry being visible. And if they're not comfortable with that stuff, then we can go another step. Sometimes the decontamination doesn't do enough and deters our instincts in regards to the uncanny valley. For instance, when this usually comes up is for a lot of people who wear standard pants, the pylon will catch the pant and it'll look skeletal for just a second. And if you're walking in a mirror and you're looking at yourself and all of a sudden you see that skeleton, regardless of your acceptance, your brain thinks, oh, I'm missing something there. Something's not right there. Where did the meat go? Right? So for a split moment, we have that shock, if you will. And so things like pant fillers have been invented to help mitigate that feeling. Foam is a standard, long time, great way to return a near exact shape for limb symmetry. We take measurements of the sound side and we apply them directly to the foam, and we get something in shape that looks pretty identical to the other side. The only downfall of foam is that it's difficult to clean, and you can only have one foam covered by insurance, sometimes for years at a time. More recently, companies such as Unique have had options for 3D printed exteriors like those on the right here. This fills the pant leg in the same kind of way, and it helps to prevent that panic reaction while still giving you some creative freedom. It's not just generically foam, it's got fun designs on it, or you could just make it look like skin if you wanted to. It's kind of up to you. It's fully customizable. They are extremely custom, so your prosthesis actually has to be finished. We 3D scan it, and then Unique prints around the 3D scan of the prosthesis. Takes a little time, but I've had great results as far as people feeling more confident, especially when they are wearing pants, and for the more active individuals that maybe foam picks up too much dirt and debris too quickly. The 3D printed Unique options, you clean them with a Clorox wipe and you're good to go. They are fresh and new. There are other companies like Unique, but it is one of the bigger names. That's why I used it in this presentation. And sometimes your prosthetist, like myself, might just have a 3D printer on site and can just do things on site if they need to. Now, maybe you're a creative type and you really want to have something a little more than a t-shirt or generic fabric. I wasn't going to include this side, and I thought that I needed to because it did. I've seen such a profound improvement for just taking that design a little bit further than just the generic fabric or a t-shirt. For the patient on the far left here, they're from Pueblo. They really wanted to have hatch chilies, but they're concerned about the suspension sleeve going over the socket. And so the simple fix was designing a graphic at the bottom of the socket so that the suspension sleeve wasn't covering it in any way, shape, or form. In the same realm, this AK socket in the middle, it was a picture, it was actually the patient's phone background, and they sent me the original picture. I think it was from Olympia National Park, and I used AI to generate more picture so it could wrap the socket, and they have the part that they love visible beneath their pant leg, which is the water running through the rocks there. So I know it's a little hard to see, but kind of that bottom third is really what they loved about the picture. So the rest of it, I just kind of AI generated and printed on a t-shirt so that I could laminate what they wanted to see on their socket and have that positive, response to seeing their prosthesis whenever they saw it. The third option on the right that I came up with a patient, they wanted something even more unique and asked to work with a design that was special to them. They really liked the carbon fiber concept behind prosthetics, but they thought it was so dull that they wanted to just liven up the carbon fiber a bit. So I hand cut out these sunflower, yeah, pieces of cloth, and I laminated them as a part of the carbon lamination. So it is fully laminated, and now the patient has that little pop of color and still gets to enjoy their bionic look, as they called it. Um, I don't have a picture of it, but something else that is possible that I've done for quite a few patients is, and that other clinicians can happily do, and I'll get into that in a moment. Um, but I've had digital artists replicate tattoos from lost limbs. So we take pictures of lost limbs, we replicate and put it on usually a t-shirt that matches the skin tone, and then that way when it's laminated, it kind of looks like you have your tattoo back, and the prosthesis starts beneath that. There's a little video there of that one. I forgot to play that, but there's the rest of it.
It's cool.
And then that one all the way around as well. So maybe you're totally okay with the aesthetics of your prosthesis and are just hoping to have some clothing that actually works with you. Sometimes that return to life and the reduction of the struggle, if you will, is what we need to have some more self-confidence. It's not how we look, but it's the fact that maybe we can't do something or wear something anymore as easily as we could have. And that little hesitation in the morning when you're picking out your clothes is what's weighing down on you. Luckily, in the last few years, there have been quite a few companies that are producing adaptive fashion. These are everyday clothes that have a thoughtful alteration to them that make wearing clothes over your prosthesis just a little bit easier. On the far left there, we have Joe and Bella. It's a brand that offers all sorts of adaptive clothing for a lot of needs beyond this population. But the options in their catalog that I thought would be the most interesting to this group would be for my 8K patients, the side zip pants. So you can get pants with a zipper on one side, both sides, or whatever you want. And that way, if you're, especially for my above the knee patients, you can unzip and adjust things without having to take off your entire pants, right? You can shimmy up a little something, or maybe get the pant over the prosthesis because that's harder to do than getting into the front. A lot of different reasons to need that, but I thought that was really handy for a lot of my 8K patients. And for especially patients with like TES belts, you can get to the belt directly without having to fully take off your pants. In addition, the shirt down there, it's kind of hard to tell. It looks like a standard dress shirt, but the closure is actually magnetic. So those buttons are just for show. So you just have to get the shirt close enough if you're maybe having some dexterity problems, or if you're a upper limb amputee. You just got to get the shirt close, and it'll kind of button itself using magnets. It'll just kind of pop down. In addition to that, the cuffs are flexible. They're stretchy cuffs, so you can just kind of slide your prosthesis through and not have to worry about, or slide your sound arm through and not have to worry about using a hook or something to close up those clasps. It just stretches around your hand. You're good to go. As seen on Shark Tank, No Limits in the center there was founded by a BK amputee. That's her in the picture. Their unlimited pant, which she's wearing and is also featured there, have hidden zippers on the medial side of both pant legs so that you can get to your BK prosthesis without having to take your pants off. And there's reinforcements around the knees to help prevent the carbon pant holes that so many amputees have issues with. I mean, I don't know a BK amputee that doesn't have issues with getting holes in their pants. But this is a reinforcement. Some of them are even reinforced with Kevlar that'll just outright prevent you from getting those holes, or at least deter them for the full length of the pant life. They have a lot of varieties, denim, khaki, and then there's a whole bunch of different dress pant colors coming soon. On the right here, Curves and Combat Boots. It's an athleisure company. They don't have a ton of options, but an option that I see ton of use with is the AK and BK length leggings. While there's plenty of tailors that are able to easily adjust standard fabrics for modifications, like denim and cotton, or even sometimes polyester, making adjustments to stretch fabrics is not easy. It is not easy for a tailor to do. Most tailors will just not do it. So if you're able to get it pre-done by the company, then you got something that'll last you quite a bit longer. Um, I'm hoping through those last few slides that you can start to realize that there are options, and please recognize the steps that your clinician is and is willing to take to show that they care more about you than they might let on. I know that I say a lot of I phrases, but I really haven't met a lot of clinicians that aren't willing to take these steps. Um, I'm also asking that next time you see your clinician, try to be comfortable with communicating things that are not objective. Your subjective experience is oftentimes more important than the minor gait deviation that we're seeing in the perfect walking conditions that are parallel bars. The way that we write our notes is called a SOAP note, subjective, objective, action plan, because your subjective experience does come first. Personally, when my patients take interest in their care and show effort to want to improve themselves, it makes me want to show up for them even more. And it also helps me and other clinicians avoid something called a compassion fatigue. If there's one thing to take away from my whole spiel tonight, it is that regardless of how fancy or new your prosthesis might be, it's okay for your dissatisfaction to come from your emotions. Um, Please, I'm just asking that you work with your clinician and really let them know if something's bothering you. Try to be open and see what they can do to help change the way you feel. I've given you some options tonight, but there's plenty more out there, and I and a lot of other clinicians come up with new ones every day, just to kind of face patient needs. To wrap this all up, don't be afraid or discouraged to take the small steps in boosting your confidence. The uncanny valley demonstrates how our psyche directly impacts your self-image and subsequently your self-confidence. Go ahead and talk to your clinician about decorative laminations and pant fillers, or maybe treat yourself to some clothes that might make your life just a little bit easier, make you feel a little more whole again. Every step you take is closer to your goal, both with your prosthesis and with your self-image. I wanted to thank you for your time tonight. While I'm not sponsored by any of the brands I mentioned tonight, I did reach out to them because I wanted to make sure that the information I was presenting was accurate to their standards, because I knew that this was going to get recorded. But in response, No Limits and Joe and Bella offered a discount code for the group that will work supposedly even for the recording. Whoever can use these codes. For transparency, they do not bounce back to me in any way, shape, or form, but Joe and Bella, their whole company is on this first name basis thing. So they wanted to make the code my name. And I said, fine, I guess. It's the whole company. Everything in the company is all first name basis. So there's these two codes here. If you did want to try out a couple of those adaptive clothing brands, if that spoke to you. If not, again, I won't be offended. I don't get bounce backs for it. I was just reaching out to make sure the information was accurate. And they're like, hey, have these codes for those people. And I said, okay, sounds like a plan. But with that, that's it for my presentation tonight. If you have any questions, or if anybody else wants to ask any questions or anything like that, I'm here to however long you need me for.